Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, your money management during the holidays, but first, the trials and tribulations of Pennsylvania's Attorney General Kathleen Kane and a little dueling budget press conferences. Back in a moment.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, we had another one of those huge weeks in Pennsylvania politics. Joining me is Brad Bumsted with the Pittsburgh Tribune Review and Angela Couloumbis with the Philadelphia Inquirer. Big papers on either end of the state. Before we get to what I call the trials and tribulations of our Attorney General, Kathleen Kane, let's talk a little bit about dueling press conferences. I'll start with Brad Bumsted. I've not seen this before in the many years I've followed Pennsylvania politics. Two press conferences held on the same day, one by an outgoing administration, one by an incoming administration. We're talking about Governor Corbett and Governor-elect Tom Wolf, all giving different versions of the budget and fiscal situation of the state. Brad Bumsted.
Terry, I've never seen it either, going back to Dick Thornburg when he was governor. Never seen them argue over the amount of the deficit or the surplus or whatever it would be. In this case, it's a deficit. But it's important to Corbett to try to put the best spin on this so it doesn't look like it's a huge mess that he's leaving Wolf with. And it's important to Wolf to try to look at maximize the problem so that it might be easier to get a tax increase. I'm not predicting that, but...
No, I get it. I mean, I think, isn't that the point? I mean, if you're the incoming governor, he's making the worst-case scenario because he doesn't want to move ahead and have to live with, oh, everything was all right when you took office. I mean, isn't that the whole point?
Oh, absolutely. I think what you saw yesterday, for the most part, was political messaging from both sides. You have the outgoing administration essentially concerned about legacy. They want to put out a message that they have done, they have righted the state, they have put it on the correct course. And then you have the incoming administration understanding the reality, which is it's going to be very difficult for Tom Wolf when he comes into office to deal with this budget gap with a Republican-led legislature that is now a bit more trending conservative.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other thing, Brad, I mean, we're not predicting this, but it's not arguable. During the campaign, Governor-elect Wolf said he wants a shale tax, a 5% tax on natural gas extraction. He also wants a progressive income tax. He's been a little vague about it. We'll know when the budget message comes out. There won't be any vagueness left in it, we're sure. But it's not arguable that it looked like yesterday or earlier in the week when he had the press conference, he was laying the foundation not just to defend the fiscal situation he inherits, but also for doing what he said during the campaign.
As your colleague at Muhlenberg, Chris Borick, pointed out to me yesterday, that it just makes sense if your campaign positions are to do a shale tax and to do an income tax and these other things, that the worse the situation is, that happens to fit into it. He doesn't want a bad situation. He doesn't want a mess, but it does fit with his agenda. Yeah,
I mean, Angela, all through the campaign, that's the one narrative that he didn't back down on. I mean, he didn't walk away from a shale tax. He didn't, he didn't get into specifics about what the progressive income tax, however that'll finally work out. But you've been covering the Capitol for many years. I don't think there's any doubt, notwithstanding the debate over the size of the deficit, but the state looks like it has something in the order of a $2 billion structural deficit, right?
Well, yes, and if you listen closely even to Charles Zogby, who's the budget secretary under Corbett yesterday, I mean, he pretty much said, barring any major reforms like, say, selling off the liquor stores or pension reform, the state has two options, really: cutting or raising new revenue, and there's very little appetite for cutting. So I think going forward,
he says they've hit the wall on spending cuts, so they have to. They may need. What he said was a discussion on revenue is appropriate.
But I mean, I do think, and even Governor Corbett, in fairness to him, during the campaign, would not make the tax hike pledge that he made in his first term. And the budgets have not grown, compared to the 4.5%, 5% budgets that you covered during the Rendell years. The budget increases under Governor Corbett have been rather meager. I think the first year, less spending then Governor Rendell. And then modest bumps, 2.1 percentage point increase this year, right? This is not a big, so laying the groundwork, even the Corbett administration hinting that new revenues might be needed, right?
Right. It'd be interesting if Corbett had won the election to see what he would do, given his positions the first 4 years. It may be unavoidable, but it seems that with the Republican legislature more conservative, that a drilling extraction tax would have the best chance of any of those, simply because you have a lot of moderate Republicans from the Southeast, in particular, who they want it.
Yep. All right. Well, let's run to a break. When we come back, both of you have been covering, the Attorney General of this state, Kathleen Kane, since she took office. Lots of controversies, what I call the trials and tribulations, no pun intended on the trial. Let's get into that a little bit and look at what she has done, what she has not done, and try to figure out where all of that might go. We'll do that after we pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back. Well, we're going to get the money management during the holidays. I'm looking forward to this. I'm not going to try to spend a lot of money, I think. But before we do that, we're going to segue into a conversation with Angela Couloumbis and Brad Bumsted about the Attorney General. Angela, elected with tremendous promise, 14 percentage points, led the ticket, first woman, first Democrat, lots of high expectations. And then, to be candid, it all seems, in some respects, to unravel. Go through for our viewers sort of what are some of the big takeaways from her first 2 years.
Well, I mean, her first year in office, I mean, she was on top of her game. I mean, I remember last December in New York, she walked into most of the parties at PA Society, and she was a star. I mean, it was like the crowds were parting for her. And, here we are a year later, and she not only finds herself in a very difficult situation public relations-wise, but she has a legal situation on her hands. There's a grand jury in Montgomery County investigating alleged leaks by her office, alleged grand jury leaks, and that grand jury is set to expire in a few weeks, and a decision is going to be made. And there are several options here. The grand jury could do nothing. I mean, obviously that's an option. I mean, it could issue a very scathing report about how this information was released to a Philadelphia newspaper.
Philadelphia Daily News, I believe.
Yes,
right?
The Philadelphia Daily News, about a 2009 case that was investigated by the Office of the Attorney General, or, in the worst case scenario for her, charges could be recommended.
Angela makes a great point when she talks about this first year. I mean, she decided not to defend the state's gay marriage law after the Commonwealth Court said it was unconstitutional, wildly applauded, obviously more in Democratic circles, but now we have majority support. We're positioned here, we're not talking about whether it's good or bad, for or against it, but a majority of Pennsylvanians support gay marriage, wildly applauded. And then she gets into a series of controversies dealing...
But even to interrupt, she also shut down Corbett's lottery privatization.
And that was popular.
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the management of the lottery, whether it should be outsourced. But then we have the business with Jerry Sandusky and the investigation. We go through the pornographic email situation. I mean, what do you think underlies all of these difficulties? I mean, we go from 3 or 4, not minor, but major stories involving people who worked in the past, people in the Corbett administration now. Go ahead. What do you...
Well, her real problems this year began on March the 16th with a story that Angela and a colleague did, about Kane deciding not to prosecute 4 Philadelphia legislators and a traffic court judge who were allegedly videotaped taking cash, in the case of the judge, bracelet. And that was just huge. And that had legs and went on for about a month and a half.
She wouldn't prosecute.
No, she decided not to prosecute.
Right. And then she turned the case over at his request to the Philadelphia District
After
Attorney.
a public sparring match with Seth Williams, the Philadelphia DA, which did her no good either. This went on, but look, there have been some of it's a result of missteps, some of it's a result of inexperience, some of it may be bad luck, I don't know, but who knows? But none of that matters now. What matters is this grand jury. It's her grand jury, statewide grand jury in Montgomery County that could do what Angela said, all those various choices. It does expire December 31st, but various legal experts have told me that it can be extended in the sense that you can take the material there and transfer it to another grand jury.
Now, I get
or you can create a new
that,
grand jury.
That both of you agree this could be an absolute make or break moment. Is that, Angela, is that the point? I mean, it looks like both of you are saying.
Absolutely, yes, it is.
Is this, so if the grand jury, I mean, we can speculate here a bit. I mean, I don't know if it's the wisest thing to do. But if the grand jury were to convict her, and I think is that the right word?
Find her in contempt.
Find her in contempt.
They could come up with additional charges, but who knows?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that would be completely devastating to her career, right?
Or she could go to prison.
Right.
There's a 6-month.
Not only devastating, but she.
Right.
Yeah,
now,
she would.
I'm not saying she will.
No, we understand.
She may turn. But look, when she appeared before the grand jury, she talked to the media, released a statement, and in it, she said that she was aware of giving information to the Philadelphia Daily News, but she did not believe that it was grand jury material.
I get it.
That's where she's resting her defense of this on.
Okay. I want to run to a break. When we come back, I want to go back. I mean, so the bottom line here is we're poised. We're waiting to find out what the grand jury says. Is that right? The report this month or next, and that is potentially a make or break moment.
Yes.
All right. When we come back, I want to go back to a story that Angela wrote about this sting because it still has important political implications that I want to get into a bit after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit pacoalalliance.com.
Welcome back with Brad Bumsted and Angela Couloumbis, two longtime reporters. They cover Harrisburg and state politics. Angela, I want to go back to this sting involving 4 state lawmakers and a Philadelphia traffic judge caught on tape, as Brad mentioned a moment ago, allegedly doing a cash for favors deal. But the Attorney General, the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Seth Williams, did actually get a plea deal after the Attorney General said these cases weren't prosecutable.
Yes, she made a very big deal about defending her decision to shut down the sting while she had jurisdiction over it. I mean, she said various things. Number one, it was a really bad case and it was poorly run, and it was possibly tinged with racism. Subsequent to that, you had her and the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Seth Williams, sparring publicly over the merits of the case for a variety of reasons. And she challenged him. She said, you think this case is so good, you take it. So he did.
And he got it.
And
Brad, as you pointed out, there could be more, right? More.
Yeah.
Well, yes. He is, Seth Williams has hinted that there may be additional charges filed against the remaining legislators. We don't know
right.
if it'll be all of them or what they'll be charged with.
All right, thanks for the update. I think it's important for our viewers to get a full picture here. All right, money management during the holiday season. This is an important segment for me. I want to watch what I do with my credit card. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
Well, welcome back. Well, money management during the holiday season. I think there's some sage advice coming up here for all of us. Joining me is Pat Conway. He's sitting next to me. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association and a frequent guest, along with Mike Wishnow. He's a senior VP with the PA Credit Union Association. The titles are done. Okay, Pat and Mike, I think we can have a nice... All right, Michael, let me start with you. Folks are in a little better shape now financially, and so that's even a bigger cautionary note while they go out and enjoy the holiday season. Am I right about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the recession was tough for a lot of folks. Yeah. And I think people are feeling more confident, a little more confident this year than last, a little more confident last year than the prior year. Right. And that's borne out by the Consumer Federation of America study that just came out talking about people's spending habits. About 10% of us are saying we're going to spend more. About a third of us are saying we're going to spend less than last year. But we all know that most of us spend a little more than we intend. So
yeah, and also they talk about was this in the study where it says what would you do with an unexpected windfall of $5,000? Is that it? I'd go to Florida and play golf. What would you do? What would you do with that money?
You know, it's interesting. Some people will use that money to pay off debt or to pay down debt. Yeah. You know, other people will put it into savings, and it just depends on the demographics. But, savings are important. We see people, living beyond their means, overspending, particularly at the holiday time.
See, I was going to ask you that. I mean, it's a little more difficult with all the ads and all the deals. I mean, we start with whatever Black Friday was, it didn't actually materialize quite because it was now evening Thursday. Everybody was running around all over the place all night. But you're right about that. I mean, the holiday season, there is a bit of let's spend a little more, right?
There
that
is.
You have to be careful about.
Absolutely. And credit cards are a big part of that. It's easy, which is great. It's an easy way to pay, but sometimes the credit card debt runs up, and we encourage people to have a budget for the holidays and for the entire year as well.
Yep. Well, that's great. Good segue into what I want to talk about, which is these resolutions. Now, I'm not sure I've ever done these, but Michael has been on for many years, and he's smiling. But there are some things that we've just got to start doing. I mean, it just makes sense. As Pat talked about, develop a written monthly and annual budget, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the key word is written. Seriously, write down what you're spending and what you intend to spend and look at that, because that really is how you prioritize your financial life. If you're spending a lot of money on stuff that you don't want to be spending money on, the only way you're going to adjust it is if you see it in front of you, right, Pat?
Yep.
Absolutely.
And you say develop a relationship with a credit union or a bank. That's another one of your proposals, correct?
Yes.
Why do that? What's the point about that?
It's hard to believe, Terry, but nearly 10 million Americans are unbanked, so they have no relationship with a financial institution. And, we think it's important to have a relationship with a credit union or a bank so that you don't have to use, some of the folks are using payday lenders, check cashers, and these financial institutions charge, exorbitant fees. And I think, having a relationship with a reputable financial institution is part of what we all ought to be doing.
And we're not going to get into payday lending. We've talked about that. That's a program. You guys will come back and we'll talk about that another time. All right. Critical review of your personal debt. This is a good time to do that?
Yeah, I
know it's always a good time, but...
It is. As Pat alluded to, folks are in debt. Roughly 2/3 of Americans carry a credit card balance. So what you want to look at is you want to take an inventory of your debt and start to pay that debt down in a way that makes sense.
Right.
Typically, that's paying your highest interest, which oftentimes is your credit cards, or short-term unsecured loans first. And, it may be refinancing in today's interest rate environment where interest rates are at historic lows. So, yeah, it's good to once a year take a look at your debt situation. Has it improved over last year?
Right.
What can you do to get yourself in a better spot next year?
And one of the things I think we all wrestle with as we earn a little more, or maybe we get a raise, or as we pay down some debt, how about saving? How about a plan to save?
That's a great point, Terry. Part of our, planning for people, really, and what we encourage them to do is to pay themselves first by saving. So a part of that budget should be a specific plan and a written plan to save money and to put money away for the future.
Now, we've talked about this over the years, and we'll continue to talk about it. Your program in the school for educating young folks about finances. We talk about that particularly to get away at college with a credit card for the first time away from home. But the parents and the family members should have some responsibility with their kids about teaching finances.
Absolutely. Teaching personal finance practices at the earliest age is really critical. Many schools do a very good job, some schools not so much, but the bottom line is, even with young kids, you can start reading the Berenstain Bears' Trouble with Money. One of the things that
I'll get that for my grandson.
There you go. That's a good. Another thing you can get for your grandson is there is a bank that has 3 slots: save, spend,
no kidding,
and give.
I love that.
And
That's
so you're teaching
idea.
at a very early age, you got to save some money. Yes, it's okay to spend some money, but you should also take a little bit of money for charity.
There you go. Yep, good point. All right. A lot of us just simply live beyond our means.
That's true. And I think having a written budget, specific saving plans in place will help us not do that. But most Americans, over 60%, live beyond their means and are spending more than they should. And I think planning ahead and having the discipline to do the things that we're talking about today will help all Americans moving forward.
Yeah, and I think to summarize this, aren't we basically, Mike, as we end this segment, talking about creating good savings, investment practices, end of quote, period. Save, invest, pay down debt.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
But it's not the easiest thing in the world for a lot of people to do.
It isn't, but people have to tie that to the larger picture of their lives. And, most of us are living longer. Most of us want to retire at some point. So you start early, get to where you need to be.
Great advice. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.